Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. And today I've got the amazing Mike with us. Hi, Mike, how are you?
I'm very well, actually, enjoying a couple of days of sunshine, a little bit of rain down here on the coast where I live, which is lovely. This bank holiday weekend. So yeah,
I'm
good,
glad you're
good.
enjoying your bank holiday and you're getting some fresh air. And you're somewhere that's full of nature because I love that. I love the nature. It's a really healing
I'm
thing
here.
to me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us a
This
little bit
morning,
more. So tell
well,
us
I
a
was
little
gonna say
bit
this
more about
morning,
you,
my
Mike.
wife and I, we went for a walk this morning, me
Yeah,
and my wife,
yeah,
down at it's called Pegwell Bay, and
yeah.
it's nature reserve. So
Amazing.
we're very lucky to have, very blessed to have this space. So yeah, a little bit about myself. Backgrounds. Let me see. Where I'll try to make it quick because
Oh,
I've been in the
gosh.
industry for
No
over
rush.
40 years. Yeah, so compressing it. I've been around for a while, so it's lovely to be able to share something, hopefully of use.
Value. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I very much at this point in my life, it's quite an important thing to me to sort of I've been very fortunate, from in many respects, being a white guy in a white society and
Yeah.
sort of benefiting from the privilege of that is something that I'm very aware of. And
Yeah.
so it's important this stage of my life, particularly because of that, is to sort of be a mentor, act as a mentor to
Amazing.
people to kind of in some way pass on, something of my experience, and what I'm actually doing now is completely different to what I've done for most of my life, I was very lucky when I was 20, I got an opportunity to write and record an album with a guy named Ian Dury, who was a very
Wow.
successful.
Yes.
Yeah, I was brought in, and I'd done a lot of sessions already for the guy who kind of linked me up, a guy named Adam Kidron. He had worked a lot with rough trade. So this is going back to like end of it's 1977. So,
I was going to say the 80s. That's when I was born.
yeah,
I
exactly.
was going to
That's when
say
I
that.
first started. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I was sort of already doing sessions when I was like 19, 18 and 19. This is like before the drum machine really took off. So it's like it was
Excellent
just
stuff.
on that. Yeah, so I was really also lucky because of my training. My parents, my dad was from a poor, I suppose, working class, you could say Irish family, but he was very lucky because he was able to benefit from sort of investment in the States where they were investing in science, and was good at math, so he got a scholarship to go to college, and that's how he came to London in the '60s. So, and having experienced that because he was American, born, Irish descent.
Yes.
Um, and he experienced Europe or that kind of England at the time, London the '60s. It's like infamous or famous really for all the fashion and everything going on. And so after going back to the States for a while, and I was had some time there, of course. Then they decided to move the family back here, and I was always already doing music as a kid. My
Yeah.
parents tell me I was always
I'm there
musical and
actually.
singing things and what have you.
Yeah.
So but they were my dad was an educator. My mom also ended up being an educator. So
Amazing.
they were
Yeah.
very much, wow, it's important to get proper education. And even though, funny enough, it was totally haphazard. I mean, they started a free school
That as well.
at 16, where I could go and do anything I wanted. And I ended up making guitars or trying to make a
Wow.
guitar. And because I wanted a guitar, my parents wouldn't buy me one, so I tried to make one. So that was one experience. Then they came over here and they sent me to the local comprehensive, which actually it was a Catholic school. So I had to wear this uniform and I had to have my hair above the collar.
Yeah.
And it was like complete sort of like couldn't be further in contrast, But and the reason I only point that out is because I haven't had, I suppose, a traditional being in one area my whole life. My dad went to Switzerland for a while to do part of his research, and then
Right.
they came to London. We moved to South London, we moved to North London. So I've kind of like music has always been a way of connecting with people. I used to bring my
What's
guitar to
right?
school.
Yeah.
I used to be like,
Yeah.
hey, oh hey, and all the girls would come around and we sing Elton John songs or whatever, that kind of
Amazing.
thing. So that was kind of like my way of connecting, but also to be noticed, to be, to feel some self-esteem. Music was that thing.
Connect.
So that just has that carried in, onto my life in professions. Although in some important things like, kind of that occurred to me in that early 20s, which I suppose they've been very formable. They formed my personality, my character. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to, I actually got a job making tea in a recording studio. That's how I kind of
Oh,
started.
yeah.
The old days, well, before they had music colleges and everything like that, how did you get into the industry? It was kind of, and that was my thought that would be the way. And actually, I did meet a fantastic musician who knew the owner of the studio, a guy named Reba Kwakuba, who was a Ghanaian African drummer who played with Jimmy Cliff, and then he played with a band called
Oh,
Traffic, and he
wow.
real big part of the whole 60s scene. Worked with Steve Winwood and different people. And that he became a really important person in my life and in terms of mentoring me. So I had that experience, and then through him, met another guy named Roscoe G, who was his friend and had also been in Traffic. And so just to kind of take a little sort of leap into the 90s, Steve Winwood was putting together the reforming a band called Traffic, which I didn't really know Steve Winwood's Traffic band. I knew his Steve Winwood stuff, like Back in the High Life and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
and Higher Love, we all know. Most people
Amazing
know.
track.
You know,
Yeah, I love I love.
Bring me a higher. That was like everyone knows that, right?
Classic.
But I that was this Traffic was before my era. But Roscoe, the bass player, who was in the sort of last lineup of Traffic, recommended me for a tour
Nice.
when they because I play keyboards and guitar, so I could switch
Amazing.
back and forth.
I
And
love that.
Steve is a kind of keyboard player, but he's also a guitarist. So that was an amazing opportunity at that point for me.
Yeah.
But in a way, I have lot of gratitude for those two individuals, those musicians who are. I mean, I'm still in contact with Roscoe. He lives in Cologne, and we sort of kind of communicate regularly. So I was in my first band when I was a kid with a guy named Reggie Jeffries, and music that it's always just been what I needed to do. Some people, you
Release. Yeah.
you just need to make music.
It's true.
The I think one thing with me is that I've never been like really an artist in the terms of being a performer. It's never
Okay.
been my thing. I've always really supposed been behind the scenes, working either
Yeah.
collaborative with people,
Yeah.
like either co-producing or co-writing. I wouldn't say I wouldn't call myself a singer, for instance. I can sing, but I don't have a voice that is really what, oh
It's
wow,
good enough for that. Yeah, I get
yeah,
you. It's all about
I love
collaboration.
doing,
Yeah. It's all
yeah,
about collaborations.
I love doing backing vocals, things
I
like
love
that. And I love working with singers. And in fact, my most sort of recent collaboration is I've been working again with someone I worked with in the 90s, a woman named DC Lee. I don't know if you know DC Lee.
I don't know her, but I can check her
Yeah,
out.
yeah, she's lovely. I mean, she was actually in the first lineup of Wham. That's how far she goes back, right?
I should know who she is. I should know her then. Saskia.
Well, well,
Okay.
check it out. She's lovely. But she then joined Style Council. Do you know Style Council?
Okay.
Um, Paul Weller. She was actually married to Paul Weller, had children with him. And then
Wow.
she did her own solo thing. And she's just recently had an album come out on acid jazz, and I've got 3 co-writes on that with her. And also I've written 2 of them with a guy named Ernie McCone, who was a longtime, collaborator. Ernie McCone's got a label called Boogie Back up
Okay.
in North London.
I'll check these
And
out. I'll check them
yeah,
out.
oh, Ernie's like me and Ernie have worked for like 30 years. He plays a lot of those with a lot of the sort of soul artists who come over from the States, like old school.
I love that.
Um
With a bit of disco.
yeah, I mean like funk as well. People like funk.
Bit of funk and disco.
Yeah,
I love,
yeah, jazz
love
funk
to see.
and disco. Yeah. I mean, in fact, do you ever heard of the thing called the Margate Soul Festival?
Yes, I have actually. Yes.
Okay, that I mean, he just played that recently. I mean, I went and watched. I'm not,
I wasn't there myself. I wasn't there, but I've heard of it. Yes.
It's a really cool event. You know, it's like that's what's down the road for me because I live in Ramsgate, which is,
Yeah.
not from Margate. And they play. Have you heard of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes?
No, I haven't.
Don't leave me this way.
Oh, yes, I have. From
That
myself here, I know it's a bank
classic,
holiday, but
right?
that's not an excuse.
Yeah. Well, that was they performed and he was in the band. He said because they basically came over just a vocalist.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about that. I mean, I think they're like in their 70s and maybe, like
Okay,
even
doesn't matter. Talent
well,
is
yes, it's
talent,
still
right? It
doing
doesn't
it.
matter about your age at all. That's not a problem.
Well, that's, it's great, because also like, and the people really appreciate it because it's like old school show. They all had like suits on. They got all the moves together.
Yeah.
Um,
The
it was
Jimmy,
great,
the
man.
Jimmy,
Great
the,
vibe.
the grooves and the vibes. This is what
All
it'll
sync. Yeah, yeah. It was cool.
love
So
that.
yeah, I mean, I'm jumping around a lot.
All
But yeah, my
right.
career is like, so I had all this all through the 90s. I worked with some amazing artists. I mean, I worked a lot with Soul to Soul. I don't know if you
I
Soul to
love
Soul.
Soul to Soul. Of course, who does not know Soul
Yeah.
to Soul?
Well, I mean, Jazzy B has another really massive,
Back to life,
kind
back
yeah,
to reality.
there you
I was
go.
getting up to
Killer
that
track.
song.
I
Everyone knew
mean, yeah.
that.
So, yeah, I mean, I played on like did a lot of sessions. I actually had one co-write on a track as well on the second album, and Jazzy's been a really another mentor, in terms of the business.
It's an icon.
Um, hmm?
He's an icon.
Yeah, he is an icon. I mean, he had the branding and everything. He had that way down. I mean, he had a shop in Camden Town back in like
I went to Camden
eight.
and saw the little disc on the floor with Soul to Soul, actually.
Okay.
They've got all the little discs now, haven't they? It's a bit like
I
Hollywood,
mean,
but it's not quite the same.
well, I think Camden has now become like this amazing, like iconic place now, isn't it? But I
Yeah.
mean, like going back to like 89, I think is when I first met him. Because I was working with a woman named Victoria Wilson James. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Probably actually with the songs. Probably not by name, but with the song,
She
I'm pretty
she did a
sure.
song called she was her like it was a couple of hits she sang for Soul. So one was called Dreams a Dream.
Oh,
Uh
yes, I
Dreams a
do.
Dream. Da, na, na, da, na, na.
That
Anyway,
was one of my favorite. It's more of a dance track. It was one
yeah.
of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, check Victoria out. Actually, tell you, Victoria would be great on this for you. She'd be great to
Thank
come on
you.
this show because
I'd love to
she,
interview her.
she actually recently got me involved in something called it's an organization that she's a mentor on called Power to Inspire. Uh,
Fantastic.
Based in America, but they've been kind of like now working with some people in the UK. And because I teach songwriting and composition at a place called LCCM or London College of Contemporary Music.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, I've been there.
Oh, cool. So I teach her on Tuesdays, and I teach songwriting in the morning and composing to media in the afternoon. And
Amazing.
she asked me, is there any students who might want to take part? So I put forward some, I talked to some of the students and said if they wanted to go. And it's mainly, they want basically people who are from, underrepresented minority groups and stuff like that. So it was really cool for me to be able to have that chance to sort of be kind of, I suppose, work as a bit of an ally, really, to
Yes. I was going to say the word
everyone.
ally because we need allies as well, don't we? That's
Well,
really,
that's
really important.
absolutely. Well, this is, that's basically really where I'm at the moment. Is like I benefited so much from just being able to just move around without any problems.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, having spent and worked with a lot of Black people in the industry, it's been like,
Fantastic talent.
and
Fantastic talent.
yeah, I mean, basically, driving in the car with a friend of mine, and I remember when I was like 17, I was driving around town with a drummer I was working with, who had mixed heritage, and he basically got pulled over the first time
I'm
most
the
of the car was
same.
there. But
I'm
lovely.
the same, actually. Yeah.
But this the thing, it's hard. I mean, I can see that it's hard. I mean, that's the thing. And having spent time where I'm hanging out with them, and then like basically the cops pull them over. Just and like that's never happened to me like that.
Racial profiling still happens today. Not just that,
Exactly.
also underrepresented groups do get treated differently. There is this two-tier policing system that's always been there, actually.
Oh, yeah,
It's something that's
absolutely.
really brought an awareness to me was these riots that happened recently when
Mhm.
more of the white folk were complaining about people from disadvantaged and minority backgrounds getting treated kind of in a different way. And I think sometimes that's the way it should be. Like people have issues and different barriers to overcome, and the trust is not always there, like it is for cis white men. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes people don't, they take it for granted rather than understanding the differences that actually makes to a lot of communities.
Absolutely. And I mean, this, I think a lot of it, from my experience of, hanging out and with being around people, that there's a lack of understanding,
Yeah.
not just in terms of the current times, but also like historically. I mean, England is, there's a lot of cool things about England and, whatever. I mean, I don't want to put it down. It's been good to me. And I think there's a lot of good people in this country, but they don't they don't fully acknowledge sometimes or bring it out in the open, like the
Yeah.
history, you
Yeah.
know,
What's really happened.
you going back, where did the wealth come from? How has this country and Europe and America? I mean, it's the thing, it's like it's very difficult probably for a lot of people to sort of say, okay, well, why are people feeling like there's not just injustice, but that they don't have a chance to kind of break through when they've actually been the one who has helped build the wealth in the country and made it, the sort of put it into the position it has been. I mean, it's a book that I've read, a fantastic book. I mean, you probably know this guy, David Alashaga.
Oh wow, let's have a look at the book. It's called Black and British. Oh, but
Yeah.
amazing book. Yes.
I
I'll
mean,
share
this
the
guy,
description.
he's a historian who's on BBC. I don't know if you've ever seen that show. It's called A House Through Time.
I haven't actually, but I'm interested in all this kind of spiritual stuff. I've been doing a lot of that lately,
Well,
actually, spiritual work
this,
and deep
this
diving.
I mean, this book basically goes through the history of England and talk and show and really goes. He's a historian. I think he's at Manchester University, an academic there. But
Fantastic.
he's really working hard to bring out the historical truth of England and its relationship to Africans and the diaspora, the
Yes.
Caribbean,
Yeah.
just generally, the way and India as well. I mean, it's let's
It's
face it,
massive.
colonial the colonial wealth that has been extracted from other countries.
It makes me
Uh,
sad. It makes me sad. My mom's African American, and my mom's parents. My mom was working in the airbase in Upper Hayford, I think it was. It's like an American airbase. And then my
oh,
dad was African American airman, and obviously they got together in the war, and he went back to America, and she was left with a child. Then my mum ended up deaf. Both my parents are deaf as well,
wow.
multiracial. So like coming from all these different backgrounds and understanding how colonial, like, disadvantages and benefits and racial profiling and, finance and money, class. Not a lot of people really talk about class over at the moment. And I think, with this intersectional approach that we have when we look at class, disability, finance, money, race, gender, all of those different things that you got to look at when someone's got to succeed in an industry that is based around money. It's based around, having those people around you. And that's the difficult part of it, I think. It's really hard.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing about this, the system that exists, is the neoliberal, capitalist system,
Yeah.
that has evolved really, for the past, 400 or 500 years about ownership and property, right? And kind of land ownership. And of course, what's happened is that, England would send ships and they would go and take a land from
Yeah.
peoples who might not be the way they culturally treat the land, right? That's what, look, American Indians, the native
Yeah. The
indigenous.
Native Americans.
I
Yeah.
mean, they just lived kind of like cool with the land. I mean, okay, I'm not saying they're perfect people. All humans have the thing,
No
but
one's perfect.
lived in yeah,
No
they
one.
lived in balance with it,
Yeah.
and they didn't the way they saw land or territory was not like the way they would put it. Like a lot of the people who went to America were British, or
Yeah.
they were sure they were Spanish. They went there and they just took the land and killed killed the indigenous people, really.
Well,
So
yeah.
it's like and then of course they took Africans as well, slaves. I mean, so it's like the way that the history of the world, in very fairly recent times, in terms of the whole sort of civilization progression. I
It's
mean, I think in school they don't really. If they were teaching kids that, imagine if kids were learning,
The truth.
that.
The real
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah, exactly. And the reality of like knowing that like actually even something as simple as the fact that, well, why are people different shades of brown? Because actually there is no such thing as really pure white or pure
Say that.
black, right?
I was going to say that actually.
It doesn't even exist. I mean, we're all different shades of brown. There's a,
Yeah.
there's a really great like what's it called? Like a thing, a reel that's being shared on uh on Instagram, which
Yeah.
has a guy saying doing that. It's like, this is light brown, this is dark brown, this is very dark brown, this is very light brown.
Yeah, we're all
I
the
mean,
different shades of brown.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Exactly. So, I mean, this thing of like what, race actually doesn't exist. It doesn't actually exist. We're all the same family. I mean, I know it sounds like that
It's,
sounds really like airy fairy and kind of hippie vibe, but
it's
that's
true.
actually
It's
that's the
true.
actual evolutionary truth. You
Yes.
know, we all migrated, from actually we were all, there's a thing called out of Africa. It's a
I was going to say that. We all originated from Africa, didn't we? We all came from,
exactly.
yeah.
And it got too hot there, and we started going up when there was this thing called the something crescent, which is where I think it's Egypt, where the Nile is. And then we
Right.
went. Some people went in one direction, some went in the other direction, and it's like, but we've all just from the same root, life, and I think that it's really sad and stupid when you see the ignorance and the kind of misguided ideas, of people where they think, oh, this is our land. We're British. What is British?
That's a
British
typical,
has never been pure.
typical
There's no
British
such
thing to
thing.
do. And I just don't like that. I just think, no, we
It's
shouldn't have
mad.
that mindset. I don't have that mindset myself.
But
Um,
that's the thing
I'm
about,
British.
like, I mean, that's the thing about like education, really, it's like, I think, and and now I'm at the moment where that's where I'm getting into more focused on education and mentoring, young
Yes.
people. And
Yeah.
particularly guided or leaning towards people who didn't have the kind of chances that I had,
Yes. Yeah.
um, and that's something I'm really committed to, and I'm actively doing that, as a mentor. I'm mentoring this young. He's actually, his parents are from Philippines, and he was actually born in Philippines,
Well,
and he's now
yeah.
here, and he's so cool, man. I mean, he's great. He's into hip hop beats and stuff like that. But what I'm focusing on with a lot of students is not like so much the music, like teaching and to do actual music. I mean, that
They know
young
that.
people know
They
what they're
already know
doing.
that bit,
Exactly. It's
right?
more about like what's under the hood of the industry. What's going
Right.
on?
That's the most important bit that they don't teach you.
That's
Nobody
right. They don't.
does that.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, for instance, like a lot of young people who are making great music, there's another person here where I recently met up with a guy who's a really great kind of rapper. I mean, he's like, the style of music is not something I'm very versed in. Let's put it that way. I
Yeah.
don't know. But I can hear he's really good.
Yeah.
Uh, and he, I said, "Are you a member of PRS?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, you've got 25,000 streams on your track.
Yeah.
That, there's some money out there for you. I mean, it's not a lot, but get on the PRS." And he's only 20 years old. So I said, basically, I remind him, if you join when you're under 25, it's only 30 quid. 30 quid for under 25 to join the PRS for
Yeah.
life. And even so, you can do that even if you don't have anything out. And that
Yeah.
way you benefit right away from a lot of the resources that involves. I mean, a lot of people, I know they're just selling beats and stuff and they're kind of doing their thing, and that's all cool, but in the long run,
And commercially.
I think these institutions that have been there are fighting to keep,
Mm.
the protecting the composers. And then you have the PPL as well, the PPL. If you're a performer, joining them. And then if you're actually putting out your own music, you can join as a rights holder. So I don't know if how much people talk about that here. I haven't had a chance to look at all the different
Yes.
things.
We did talk about the PPL and the PRS. I was part of the PRS for the key change program last year. So yeah, we
Okay.
do talk about the PRS quite a lot actually. Yeah, and the
I mean,
PPL.
that's great. I mean, and like sort of, if you sort of these days, a lot of people put their music out themselves, right? So like for instance, if you use DistroKid, if someone uses DistroKid and they go on it, and then it comes down to that place, they upload the track, they put it on, it says, do you have an ISRC code, right?
Yeah, and
And
that's your distribution, right? So we're talking about distribution with DistroKid, if anyone doesn't know
that's
that already.
Well, good stuff. Thank you. That's good for
Just so
clarifying.
other people don't know. We know what we're talking about, but some people might not.
That's good. That's useful. Thank you. To kind of remind me because it's true. Sometimes you have to I have to remind myself that like, yeah. And so
Okay.
you're
Don't
good at that.
apologize to me. It's fine. You know what you're talking about. It's okay.
But this the thing is like they'll assign, DistroKid will assign someone their ISRC code.
Yeah.
It will be just that one-off one, and it
Yes.
won't actually in the long run, it's easy to go into PPL and join as a rights holder. And then you
Right.
have your own ISRC code that will be with you for your whole
For the whole
whole
for that one
life.
track, and it's that specific track as well, isn't it?
That's right. And
Yeah.
you basically there's I think when I mean I have my own and I got it back about sort of I don't know 15 years ago when I started putting out my own stuff and there's three letters that are kind of attached to me and they're always weird. Then I've just kept the year and how many you sort of
What
it's a
performance
very
you
easy
do,
thing.
where you perform them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
anytime any sort of usage, it's always be tracked to who owns it,
Yes.
and I think that's just so basically I'm a big believer in with artists who are putting out the music to make sure they have all their copyrights protected. They know how it works under the hood. That's basically the thing. I
Yeah.
mean, 'cause I'm sure it's probably similar for you in a way that we love to make the music. That's the fun part.
That's the
That's
creative part. That's the bit where you're free. You're like a big kid in the playground. You're just making
that's
stuff.
right.
Yeah.
That's it. You have, and it's great. You kind of make something you're happy with, is comes out where you're really proud. You want to share it with the world.
Yeah.
But how are you gonna make sure you get paid? You
That's the
know,
most important part. It's a business, isn't it? It's not hobby, it's a business, and that's the difference.
absolutely. And I mean, I know at the moment it's a really crazy time with digital and Spotify not, paying tiny rates per stream and all that kind of business. Um, but if someone is owning and taking care of their business on their own little sort of, being a sole trader, just and they have dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's in terms of rights.
You know the
They register.
business, and they know how it
Yeah,
operates.
yeah. Then there's opportunities to maybe try to get in touch with music supervisors and submit your stuff for like potential use.
That's it.
So that's the obviously that means that, you have to be careful not to use someone else's track
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
use a sample that's not cleared.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are other issues, I suppose, the other layers, because I know a lot of people these days, that's where they'll just take a track and they'll do their own thing over it.
Sign a contract without reading it, or they just let the music go, and then once that's gone, that's your rights gone, correct?
I mean, that's it exactly. And I mean, also that whole, at the end of the day, it's like I think trying to kind of like encourage up and comers to think of the long game. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like if you're able to start doing all that stuff now, when things might be tough, whatever, but if you can get to the habit of that, because I think a lot of people maybe when I come into it, like, oh, I'll get a manager or I'll get an agent and all that kind of
You
thing.
don't need it till you get paid, right? And I've done this for 4 years without getting any payments. And I do it by
Yeah.
myself, because I love it. It's a passion. There's a
Well,
difference.
yeah, I mean, that's great. Do you put your own music out there
I haven't
and
released any music just yet. I'm looking for the right producers, the right songwriters, the right collaborators. I collaborate in loads of other ways to build
uh-huh.
trust, to build relationships,
That's
meaningful
great.
work. But I haven't actually let music go yet, because I think if it's going to be that good, you need to wait and find the right people with the right team, the right backing, the right finances, and then you can make the next steps. I think sometimes it's about being patient, isn't it? And knowing when's the right time, and letting industry folks know who you are, and building that
Mhm.
relationship with people in the industry and knowing how it works is super crucial. Super
No,
crucial.
you're absolutely right. No, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, I think one of the advantages that we're, in the period we're sort of living in, where it's digital and people have the ability to sort of, I suppose, build their own brand and,
Yeah.
get their own vibe together and find their own team, is that, you know, it's like if you can get that right and you put it out there and you have all the moving parts working really well, like visuals or whatever. I mean, I can see when people do it, really well, and it's like, wow,
Marketing is really
yeah,
important as well. A lot of people forget about marketing. It's about your audience, knowing who they are, where they are, do you know, the
that's
age
right.
groups, the demographics. It's super important.
and I think that ability to communicate directly with people who might follow you on Instagram, or like you send something out on TikTok, whatever. That is ways that you can build that following, and then of course you do become an attractive proposition to a manager or a label. So
Exactly.
in a way, it's up to the artist to sort of do that initial groundwork, to lay the foundations.
Yeah.
And once they've got something that is solid, people will start talking about it, for one. And
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
yeah, and there's also, I think with things like introducing the BBC, there are opportunities, or there's,
Yeah.
obviously live opportunities to try to build some, an audience if you're that kind of band.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, there is good things going on. There is good points about the whole um digital, and the ability to kind of essentially make really great sounding music in a very sort of home studio type
Low cost
situation.
environment, in a low cost environment, but you need the right people around you with the right expertise, because you can't do it all by yourself. And this is what I say to a lot of people as well. You need a team. You have to have a good team, because you can't do it by yourself. That's impossible, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are people who's there are occasionally people who find a way to do it, at least get it to a certain stage before
Yeah,
they can start attracting people. I
yeah,
think in a way, yeah, I mean, but I do agree with you. It's to really get it to that level, where you're sort of an artist, where you're gonna be noticed, because that's the thing, is so many people doing it,
that's the key.
on that level. How do you kind of get noticed beyond the sort of throng, of people
All
putting,
that
I
noise.
can't remember.
You're like, help me. I can't
Yeah,
do
how
it.
many, I can't remember how many tracks are being released every week, but it's like a crazy figure. I mean, it's
Big
tens
number.
of thousands, if not more. I mean, so how do you get noticed? So really, it's about that individual interaction and building an audience, and I think that's a really important thing. I
Mike,
mean,
we've got
mm,
6 minutes left. We haven't got long, but we haven't told the audience exactly what you do and how we can contact you. We've gone on for so long, right? We've got another 5 minutes left, but we've not talked about who can contact you, what you do, and how can
well,
we find you.
what do I do? I sort of, I suppose I do lots of different things, but I mean, my main focus is composition,
Yeah.
in terms of what I see my strength is. And I'm a co-writer. I do produce, but I produce in collaboration with people. I'm not someone who comes in and sort of has a vision. I say, you should do this, or that should do that.
Joint
So
vision. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so that's one. I mean, I do also play with people, perform, with people occasionally, but I'm not really so much live. I have my home studio here, which you can probably just about see.
Fancy. It's amazing. It looks great.
Got my piano there. I've got lots of different
I
guitars.
love it. I love it.
So I score, I've done quite a lot of film scoring, and that's been a really valuable thing, and I find that really interesting and fun to do. I mean, I've been very fortunate to build up some credits, so I get a little bit of PRS, so I don't have to worry about like doing. It's taken a long time to build a little bit of an income stream, but it's fortunately it's
Congratulations.
there. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's why I focus more on mentoring.
Yeah.
I kind of, to be honest with you, I'm not like massively ambitious about myself to kind of like, I need to go and, kind of whatever, make £1 million this year. That's
Yeah.
just not my thing. In fact,
Yeah.
I work with I've been the sort of right hand man to a lot of very successful people, Jazzy being one of them.
Wow.
I've recently done a whole work with a lot of work, scoring work with a DJ who was very successful, a guy named Paul Oakenfold. I don't know if you've heard of Paul Oakenfold.
But I will check Paul out as well. So if the listeners haven't as well, please check Paul Oakenfold out. What can
Paul
we
Oakenfold
do
has
about
a
this?
label called, yeah, he was really massive. He is massive still, but his real heyday was during the 2000s, and he used to do remixes for Madonna, and
I'm sure I
you
have
know
heard of it. I'm sure I know the tracks. Once I listen to it, I'll be like, oh my God, I do know who Paul was.
yeah, and he's had lots of stuff in films as well. So him, I mean, obviously, Jazzy has been a real big influence, and he's still active. They're still out there performing. But what I'm doing now is I'm really sort of focusing more and more on mentoring, education. And then the other side of what I'm doing, which I haven't touched on, is I'm actually halfway through a PhD.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
Congratulations.
I mean,
Wow. So you're going to be a doctor soon, a doctor of music.
well, I'm not gonna. I don't think I'll use the doctor part of it. I'm like, doctor, Mike. No, but what I've actually taken this time to do is to research and get focused in on a new way of what I feel is a new way of collaborating.
Fantastic.
Basically, I'm making films that are sort of films that I take in nature and I put that are quite abstract, and then I'm
That
basically creating opportunities where people can improvise together from different types, different music
aspect
cultures.
and angles. Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
so, 'cause, like, the thing is jazz improvisation is, unless you're a jazz player, you won't be
You don't know
playing
how
jazz.
jazz works. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's like reggae. Reggae is a specific beat and a specific style, and that's what all music's like, right? All music's
It's
like
right,
different
but
genres.
that's the thing about these different, like, I think that the sort of the tribal aspect of genre, which is the way that I think the industry has commodified music. I think it's a great thing. I mean, it's nice, it's cool to have these different styles, but there's also the idea of, like, to communicate together with people who are different,
It's a
who
bit
do
old school
different
now, that
things.
old way of doing it, isn't it? Let's bring other people into it, is what you're saying, and
Yeah,
diversify
and
it more.
and it's also like the idea of communicating about music in a way with people that you wouldn't ordinarily communicate with,
Amazing.
like, for instance, I did an experiment, well, not experiment, it was like a performance, but it was experimental performance with a free jazz drummer
Wow.
named Mark Sanders, who's well known in the free jazz world. He's a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
fantastic. And then a cellist named Maya Kashif,
Okay.
and a violinist named Anna Brigham, and me on piano.
Wow.
And we essentially improvised to these films. We did a performance, and it was fantastic. And it's also all the images were like from nature, like
So
so
it's
one
very
of them.
visual, so you can feel the feeling and the emotion
And
through
it's
the
also
music.
you're immersed. It's like an immersive experience because
Yeah. Yeah.
you're sort of the audience is watching music that is never going to be the same
You're
again. It's
actually physically there. Mentally, you're there. You can hear it, you can see it. You actually it brings you into that moment.
Yeah, yeah, and also there's nothing written down. So I'm not the composer.
So it's all in
I,
your
I'm the facilitator. I call myself the
okay.
facilitator,
That's
and
cool.
we're all the composers, and
Yeah.
we're composing in real time in the present. So basically, Maya and Anna had never signed up to be a composer, so they are now signed up to the PRS
Amazing.
because
And
and we
women
have
representation as composers is extremely important. We've now got 1 minute left, Mike. So the time has gone so fast. I'm so sorry. We've just been chatting away. And I do
it's
apologize. Like, it's just been so good, but there's literally 1 minute left.
oh
Is there anything
no.
you want to share with us before we leave? And thank you again for your time. It's been
Oh,
amazing.
it's great. That's great. I mean, it has flown by really quickly. One last thing I'd say is I have an album that I'm releasing. It's a piano album.
Yeah.
It's coming out at the end of September. It's called Moments in Motion.
Okay.
Uh,
Moments in motion. And we'll share that in the description along with your links, and everyone can contact you via the description box below.
Beautiful, and that's kind of very meditative. It's very sort of therapeutic kind of piano stuff. Which is very unusual for most of the stuff I do because most of it I've released is for jazz or stuff like that
Be
or
getting
funk.
that. I'll be getting that because I love myself a bit of jazz. Bit of Amy
Something really
Winehouse you
cool in the
can't go miss.
background. Sorry.
Bit of Amy Winehouse you can't go miss.
Ah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Amy, what a talent. Oh man, she's so wonderful. And sad that she's no longer
Yeah.
with us. But
God bless her.
she does
She was a good
music.
talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's thank you so much for letting me sort of,
Thank you.
give you a little bit of an insight into what I'm doing. I know, I hope it was